favor. And Nash has written a couple of Apex scripts for us over the years. And so, you know, knowing Salesforce people is certainly in our interest. Another interesting thing about our company is with all our lab and our equipment and so on, some people in Ottawa in the high-tech sector don't believe it's true that we could actually exist. And so getting people in the door to see our clean room and our equipment and so on, and that we're actually doing manufacturing here in high tech, stuff that, you know, companies like Mitel punted offshore 30 years ago. We can do it. And so we like to run seminars, and we haven't done one since before the pandemic. And then certainly since we moved. And so getting a screen share going and everything. So you guys are kind of guinea pigs. And for that, we thank you. Yeah, details. I'll be sending out the questionnaire later. Okay, so let's see what. Yeah, well, and power at the table. There's and the audio situation. Okay, so I think that maybe Nash and Kevin think of me as their pet a little bit because I've done some crazy stuff in Salesforce a little bit. I've presented one or two of the wacko things we've done. So I picked one this time. And then I thought I'd preface it with a little bit of what I've learned about rolling out systems inside Salesforce. So I'll start there. As I got ready to talk about this, it came to mind two conversations I'd had with some high-tech exec folks. One recently who was the president of an SAS company. They do environmental modeling, similar size and also privately held. So that guy and me had a few things in common. And then a senior VP of a public technology services company. And, you know, and when I get a chance to talk to someone like that, I'll go, so talk to me about sales. Like, how do you do that? And what was really funny was in both cases, both of them just went, oh, we use Salesforce. And I thought, well, okay, one, I didn't ask you what tool you were using. Like, I want to talk about what we do for a living. Like, and that the tool is just like a afterthought, really. And then both of them, the reason they sighed is because what they didn't like was how Salesforce had evolved into something that wasn't designed to help them, you know, and it was either poorly rolled out or co-opted, or as I was recently corrected, the accountants took it over, right? And they were using it to measure the sales guys, not help the sales guys and stuff. So, you know, I thought, okay, yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. As I've rolled out the systems, I'm still suffering from mistakes I made in some of the early ones where people just kind of find them overbearing and why are you making me do this? And so I recently did one that really went well, and I kind of used these principles. And I use them, I do some stuff where I build assistive devices for people in the disabled community. And it's the same shtick, right? You try to make the person who's using it feel like they helped design it. And, you know, even if you already had that idea, it'll be better. Like it'll get adopted and they'll feel more empowered and everything. And certainly in sales, that's the case. And this preventive maintenance management system that I'll talk about. So when you're asking someone a question like, well, how do you do sales, or how do you do PMs on your equipment? I like to think that the question can be answered with anywhere from 3 to 10 steps or boxes or categories. If it's less than 3, then it's just stupid. How do you sell? Well, I sell. Okay, that's one box. Let's try for 3, shall we? And if you have 10, inevitably what you're doing is actually describing something from the next layer of hierarchy. And so you can actually back up and you can keep it under 10 for sure. So as you describe a sales funnel, especially, it's 4 or 5 things, right? You do some searching, you do some filtering, and then, the sales goes down. And, we're quite happy with ours. And John Kummer over here actually helped me put it together and learn the science of selling. And then, if there's a lot of detail behind one of the boxes, well, you just do it again. And so you don't need to worry too much about those other boxes. So when you're getting started on any system, to sort of get there and think of it hierarchically like that. And then as a software developer, of course, now it's object oriented, and it's like you're already in your brain probably mapping this onto the architecture of your software and how it's going to look anyway, right? And you make choices about, by the time I get around to coding this up, I'll have found out stuff I don't know now. And so you architect your software in a way that you can change it later. So you start, you get a tool agnostic process between 3 and 10 steps. You think about some of the sub processes, and you can start writing those down if you like, but don't waste too much time. Now, the hardest part though is the eventual user coaxing it out of them, and asking a salesperson to tell you how they sell, and for your company. And that was the conversation I was trying to engage that SAS guy in. I was like, so like, how do you find people to sell to, and what do you do? Like, what is the process? Ours is like super unique. We've got this weird thing where the average amount of time from the first time I talk to someone until I get their money is 4.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So talk about, our sales funnel is really wide at the top. It gets skinny fast. And then, and so I can't put people into that funnel and talk to them for 4 years if I'm not going to eventually get their money. So we've got like a really sophisticated filter at the top to not let people, and it's because it takes like a couple of years to do a chip. You plan it for about a year, and then the stuff we do is kind of at the end. And so, yeah, it usually adds up. And then if it's their next chip, then you got to wait for that cycle to finish, and then you get on board the next train. So, so if someone was asking me about how I sell and trying to write it down in 3 to 10 steps, that filter would be really interesting, how I do my searching. And so, you'd have those boxes. So in Salesforce, like, there's a lot of features, right? The leads, the contacts, the tasks, the this, the that. And as a person who's selling and needs a tool to help me do the thing I do, I don't want to hear from my Salesforce developers, hey, we should use this thing. Like, you know what a lead is? Let's use that. It's like, no, I want you to extract from me exactly what it is I do, and pick, and it's the old 80-20 rule, right? Other people would use those features in some other way, but any one really good implementation of Salesforce, I would argue you're using less than 20% of the features, and you match it. So, next time you're sort of setting stuff up for someone, maybe if you think that way a little bit. So what I like to do is start coding pretty early. I will say something that'll make a lot of you cringe, I think. I'm not a sandbox guy. I go live, and I go live early. So what I try to do is think about what it is I'm eventually going to make, and then just start incrementally. Like, I'll create a new object. I can delete it. It's no big deal. I'm not going to break anything. Start doing some links. Have like the bare minimum number of fields. And then what I've sort of found is you can reach a critical mass where you've got, say one object with a few fields. And if you were to then go ahead and capture like all the objects and fill out all the fields with accurate data, now you could show it to the users. And if you show it to them too soon, they're like, I don't get it. What is it? Why are you making me sit here? But if you get it to just the right point where you're not overwhelming them and it's not too complicated and you've already made some decisions that you needed their input, but you guessed wrong, you know, they go, oh, I don't like this thing you've written because it doesn't do it the way I wanted, you know. So you find that sweet spot. So I've written an equation: if and complete, accurate, useful equals true, then roll out the proto. Otherwise, keep it to yourself. I'm glad someone. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. I absolutely. Yeah. We'll just put that equation on a T-shirt. And so that's what we've done. So like I'll jump over to this PM system in a second, but that's a good way. And then the other thing, you know, like Thomas is here, he works with me a lot, and Amanda, that they're users, and every once in a while, and also like I'm one of a small number of developers here, which I imagine is pretty weird for the president to also be a developer.
You know, all good presidents were developers in first life.
There you go. There you go. My goal is to go back to it. I'm slowly like shedding responsibilities, like real time. In fact, this isn't a joke. And day-to-day operations, I'm almost done with. Sales, I still have. And then one or two things that I really enjoy doing, including database development. So this is my end game.
Well, I could just type up. When you work with Scott, his documentation is unbelievable. He uses that description field and he describes exactly what he thinks is needed. And it's truly amazing to see somebody.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a compliment, man. I thought you were going to like hassle me for lack of documentation.
I would never do that. But
there you go. Okay, so we wrote a PM system. So what is DA integrated? So we do IC test. So when someone invents a chip, like a little microcontroller, an op amp, or one of the cool ones that we do, it has to get tested. And so we've got some really cool machines and some really cool robots. So the first thing you do is you kind of power the chip up and stimulate it with signals and make sure it actually does what it was meant to do. So the machines stimulate and measure the chips, and so we can capture design intent and see if it really does it. Like it's a radio, it's Bluetooth, and it's working. It did it, hooray. The next thing you do is what we call new product introduction, and that takes a surprisingly huge amount of hassle. So after you have a handful of the new chip, the next question is, can it live in a satellite for 25 years? Or in the case of Voyager, what, we're 70, 50 years and counting or whatever. Like those are some pretty good chips. And there's some like physics where you test a chip, do something horrible to it, test it again, and the horrible thing you did is equivalent to this many years in the field and stuff like that. So, you know, because you have this test program, you do that. There's other things, you know, like, are we going to make a profit on this chip, and where are we going to buy certain bits, and are the other manufacturing tests working? And then finally, something that's unique to the semiconductor industry is 100% of the chips that get tested, or that get built on the planet, actually do get tested. So if Ford built 100 cars, drove them all around and threw 4 in the garbage, you know, the testing of cars would be a value-added step. So that's what we do here. So you have to do it with a very high level of quality. We've got chips in the SpaceX satellites. We've got artificial intelligence chips in supercomputers. We do 100% of production tests for Cisco's optical networking chips. I can't write that in a slide, but they brought it back from Taiwan because they weren't smart enough. I charged them the same price here. We've got chips in cars all over the world. So in support of that, and there's a picture of the lab. The lab's just over here. We've got some pretty fancy testers and some pretty fancy robots and some measurement equipment. It needs to be kept in top working order. The robot can't smash chips, and the tester can't be out of cal. You know, when we're trying to get a test program working and we're not sure if it's our program or the chip itself, like, please don't let it be that the tester itself is broken. Like, cross that off my list, please. You know, so we've got a maintenance team. Donnie's part of that, and they have to keep it in top working condition. We've always been really good at that. It's part of like our core DNA to keep those machines just so. However, we also have to be able to prove it. So, you know, you can imagine the medical industry, if we're testing chips that go into like a neural stimulator implant thing, that they're going to want to know that the equipment was in cal that day when we did it. So there's, yeah, so we knew we had to have a better way of, you know, it needed a database. And when a customer comes from some pharmaceutical company in Japan and says, prove to me that system right there was in good working order on such and such a day, if I have a database where I go, sure, click, you know, not only is it easier for me to do, but it impresses the heck out of people, right? So it was a win-win, and we needed it anyway. So anytime, you know, we think about doing something, it's like, well, for me, I think of Salesforce as a programming language, and the stuff that we're doing to help sales. I rolled that out ages ago, and it's fine. I rarely touch it, and it's not that complicated. The integration, you know, so in the case of the equipment stuff, well, I've also written a cool tool to keep track of people's chips. So when they come here, that we got them, that they weren't bashed up, then we tested them, then we baked them, then we did this and that. I've got a whole other system to track all that. Well, as I'm thinking, I should make a PM system and start capturing my equipment. Of course, I'm going to do it in Salesforce, because now the records of the work we did to people's chips point at the tester we used, which in turn has its cal records, you know. So once you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
So can you clarify a PM tool?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Is it not obvious? Yeah. You know what? I've written it. I had a slide where I put it. Preventive maintenance. Yeah. Yeah. So fix it before it's broken. Yeah. Yeah. Project management. Yeah. So you know, and then now you're inside Salesforce, you've written it, it's integrated with everything else you do. The company that we buy the service contract from is also got an account record, so I know their address, all that kind of stuff, right? It's super convenient to be super integrated. And then like the reports, the views, the home pages, like inside Salesforce, that's really powerful, right? So my equipment techs, they've got their own homepage, and it's overdue PMs and equipment that's not up to snuff and stuff that they're going to work on that day.
Scott,
yeah.
Are you still using Enterprise, or have you gone to the Unlimited?
I don't know.
I think you're Enterprise.
Probably Enterprise.
And you've never hit any limits yet.
I have this thing I call the yellow and red box. So every once in a while, I write a formula, and it comes back and goes, come on, that's too many references. And I go down and down and down. And some of the early implementation we did, I kind of went to town on the lookups. And you know, if you want like the address out of the account field, there's a lot of paths you can go. And so I'm in a bit of a cleanup mode on some of those.
Data capacity. You've never run it.
So one of these days I'll talk to you about where that limit might be and what'll happen if I hit it.
We'll try it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
It's easy. You just buy more, you know.
Yeah, there you go. So,
you make more business, you get more money.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. And certainly you know, if I was to try to buy some of these systems off the shelf, they wouldn't work for us. and they wouldn't be nearly as good, and they would be wicked expensive. Okay, so I sat down, kind of interviewed my equipment maintenance people, but casually, so they didn't really know I was doing it. And you know, there was some obvious things. So here's like the 3 to 10 boxes. I had 4. So we had to like identify the piece of equipment. Tester number 3. We were going to need a field or two to describe it and make sure we knew we were talking about the same thing. How is it now? Is it running? Is it broken? What words do they like to use? Up, down, unscheduled repair. So I sort of captured their vernacular, made a pick list in the end, of course. During the pandemic, we had an interesting situation where the way we managed ourselves through the pandemic is we just had everyone log in from home, and we can actually run the machines virtually, but someone has to physically be there to load it up, put the chip in the hole and close the lid and hit go, and then let someone take over. And so we took turns doing that, and we actually did really well in the pandemic, and we were kind of all set up to go. However, what if one machine just sort of goes and decides to break that day and a bearing goes out, and all these preventative maintenance we do is to avoid that. But we wrote down a big long list of all the machines that we really cared about and what we would do. And I actually had that in a spreadsheet. So I was like, oh, I'll just transcribe it into this new system. So that was the third thing I knew we would need. And then the fourth thing was, okay, yeah, we're going to capture on a machine by machine basis what preventative maintenance is needed, how often it has to be done, and you can think, oh yeah, it's pretty obvious, right? Like something has to happen once a year. This is what has to happen. When did you do it last? That date plus 365 equals the next date. Make a view, sort by upcoming. Easy peasy. So what I did was I bought some stickers on Amazon, and this thing's working so well. You can see the thermostat over there just to the left of the TV. It's got a sticker on it, and we use it to run the PM on the air conditioner. So I bought some stickers on Amazon and stuck them on our favorite pieces of equipment. As we were moving, turns out if a piece of equipment plugs into a socket, there's certain rules. But if you actually like hardwire it into a thing, there's like a whole bunch of other rules. And when you move and get a whole new building built, I forget the name. The electricians were really scared, like the people were coming to see, and you have to have a CSA sticker. And so you have to find it. And so, all right, I just made a little thing. And there was a couple of things we had that didn't actually have it, and we had to get them done. So I just used that, and it sort of sticks around, but I've got like a checkbox, like, does it have its CSA sticker? So we used it for that. And I just rolled it out and started capturing the data and making sure that I filled out every field for the records I'd made, and made sure I didn't fill it with fake data. I filled it with real data. Then I made the pick list. So I picked available, down for preventative maintenance, down for unscheduled repair, or other. And after a while, there was a few others, and I added two more things. And I picked, from their vernacular, which ones to use, which really helped a lot. And then I made them a list, right? And so, I started doing a bunch of screenshots. There was actually some overdue PMs in this screenshot too. And on Monday, we lost an air conditioner. This Liebert 5-ton unit went down on Monday. And we used the system, and it gave us who to call and all that stuff. Then this is that unscheduled repair plan I talked about. So for that Liebert thing that went down, we have an HVAC company called Carmichael. Call Carmichael. There's the number. Anyone could do that, So if the people that normally would do this weren't around. You know, I could have done it or Amanda could have done it. It's like, oh, Carmichael, get him to fix the AC. And that particular one runs our clean room. So, you know, we have to keep it all in spec. So that was easy. So now I was at the point where my equation was true, right? I'd made a bunch of records. I'd made a bunch of fields. I'd updated them with accurate information and useful. And then I called a meeting of my equipment people and I said, hey guys, check this out. Remember I asked you about what you like to say or hear? Well, there it is in the pick list. And all of a sudden, you know, you just, the body language, you're like, they're in, you know, and look, I can make you a list of all the equipment that's down. And geez, like, you know, by the way, I've got this list too, and please keep it short, you know, and so on. And so now they're in. I said, all right, let's talk about the PM system now. And you know, when someone comes to audit us, you know, there's a bunch of spreadsheets and everyone's running around like chickens trying to get the documentation. Let's write this system so that you guys don't have to do that anymore. And I worded it in a way that was like familiar to them too, because it was I think it was 2 years ago, we actually failed an audit because we couldn't dig up the records of the machine having been calibrated. So, you know, like I said, wasn't that hard. What is it you're supposed to do? How often do you do it? We pick days instead of weeks or months, and the 30 days stuff, right? I always use days around here. When you do it, you just update the field and the formula recalculates. You're done, right? And I can use history tracking and a report with history on. And now I can just like, and I've got a little folder with the PMs, and I can just one click away and I've got like the PM records for all my equipment, export, spreadsheet, you know, and that's how like Salesforce rocks for that kind of stuff, right? Formatted reports. So, you know, I'll get calls from customers at big public companies that have like SAP and stuff. And they'll go, hey, Scott, do you think like, do you know, like all the stuff we've sent you, like, do you have that? I go, hang on, click, boom, boom, spreadsheet. Yep. You want it? And attach, email, send. And they're like, thank you, you know, because their systems just weren't made for them. And, you know, I go, yeah, here's everything I've received, or here's everything I've ever shipped, or here's everything I've ever tested. And, oh man, they freaking love it. You know, and so on the equipment, it's that easy, right? Just a history report. So just for fun, though, we got her going, and it was like, oh, so some of the time, the PM is a check. So go see what it says. And so an example is that same stupid AC that broke down. It also holds the humidity in our lab just right. And so I think it's, well, here it is. So the PM interval is 30 days. And we go and check the humidity in the lab. And it's 30%. It's supposed to be between 30 and 40. We're sensitive to static electricity. So the floors here are all conductive. And we go around and we measure them. And I've even got a sticker for the floor, because we do preventative maintenance on the floor. We measure that it conducts electricity. So I was like, yeah, all right, where do you want to put the sticker? We just stuck it on the floor. And so we've got like PM records for the floor. Anyway, so here Joyce goes and measures, yeah, it was 30, a little on the dry side, and it's between the spec, and away we go. And she did that on June the 3rd. So she is going to do it again on July the 3rd. And that'll pop up on her homepage. And it's that easy. And it's like, we don't need to do it that often. I'll just back off here, and I'd have a record of that too, right? So that was pretty easy. It was easy to add. We ended up realizing that for most of our machines, there was more than one PM. There was a check. There was the monthly this, the daily that, the annual something. So I ended up adding 5 sets of fields. So that was like on day 3, we were like, oh, wait a second, there's more than one PM. It's like, hang on, you know, okay, ready. And now they're filling out this data too. and consuming it. So that was really successful.
Do you consider a subcategory pick list, like a dependent pick list?
I know about dependent pick lists.
They're good.
They're pretty cool. I didn't use them for this.
Okay.
Yeah. I have them elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. And then one day, literally, the lab went down and there was a strange beeping sound. And we're down. And it's like, we make a lot of dollars per day. Like, this is like a little bit expensive to run this place. You know, we're doing well, but you know, you gotta be running, and you can't get time back. So if like an hour goes by and you don't make revenue off the factory, well, oh well, less cheese in Scott's fridge, I guess. And there's a funny thing that the man who was doing this the other day. What was it? It was a fire smoke detector. But it's so echoey, like, so you're hearing a beep and like, what is it? So we have a very, very fancy compressor here. And it's what they call a food grade compressor, which means that if you're somehow, I don't know, maybe chip bags or something get filled up with compressed air, and the pump is built in such a way that you don't get that oily taste on your chips. It's like, so, and for us, there's some machines that don't like it when the compressed air has a little bit of pump oil in it. So we got a very, very fancy one. And when we moved, I sort of timed the buying of the new compressor so that at our old factory, we could run the old compressor, and we hooked up the new compressor here. And we were actually only down for 3 days. So the whole lab, we moved it from our old place to our new place on a Monday morning. And by Wednesday, we were up and running again. It was mayhem. But anyway, this cool compressor, like a compressor is just a pump and a tank with a couple of other little bits, right? Well, this one, instead of having one pump, it's got 4 pumps. And the 4 pumps take turns turning on. And that way, if one pump breaks, you still have 3 and you can get it fixed. No big deal. But what we didn't know was these pumps have timers. And they count down. So when they turn on, their timer starts to count down towards 0. And when it gets to 0, you got to call the pump guy, and he's got to come and do a preventative maintenance. But we have a service contract with the pump place, so the pump guy has to come. And we didn't know that. And so one of them got to 0. It shut down. The lab shut down. And then we had to like wander around the building looking for the beeps. Anyway, so guess what? There's a new kind of PM called a runtime PM. And so it's like your car, right? You change the oil once a year, whether you need it or not, or every N,000 kilometers. And so we realized, oh, some of our machines have that where there's a counter. And so this was fun. We sat in my office and we, you know, whiteboarded it all. But basically what happens is on every 14 days, Don goes up. The last time he checked was June 11th. And the timer that day read 1490 hours left until the beeping starts. And after the last time we had the PM done, it was 4273. And so there's a little formula that goes, you're probably going to have a problem sometime around July the 31st. And so now we can schedule the pump guy to come. And so every time we go and take the read point, the guess about when the pump guy is got to come. And so, you know, probably later this month, they'll call the pump guy. So, and I had no idea that this even existed or was going to happen. I didn't know the stupid pump had these counters at all. So it's an example of, you know, I could have spec'd the crap out of this system ahead of time, or I could have bought one off the shelf, and maybe the SAP implementation squad would have asked me a bunch of questions, but I wouldn't have had this anyway, you know, and it was trivial to add it. It was hard to think through, and was it an up counter or a down counter, and what should the formulas exactly be? That was fun, but it took us a day. And then, you know, programming it took 20 minutes, you know, and I didn't even have to call Nash, right? So, you know, so that's a good example of why sort of this rolling out an early prototype works well. So
if you wonder after this complicated story, Scott doesn't have almost any technical depth in his work. Everything what he does was declarative and
right.
out of box.
Yeah, I've got 2 Apex scripts.
He got me twice in office and we did what he wants to do. And I forget about him. He forgets about me. No question.
And then just a couple of weeks ago, the medical guys called me and they went, "We need a certificate of calibration." And I was like, a what? And so he wanted, and it turned out it was a thing. So we had collected some data in March. So I had to show that I had done a PM in February and that when the PM was over, the machine was calibrated. And then we did another PM in June. And the first step of the PM is to check, is it still in calibration? And then do the PM and get it like even closer to center. Because if in June it wasn't in cal, all we know is that sometime between February and June, it went out of cal and maybe your medical implant needs to be recalled. And so, and then I have to make like a fancy thing with letterhead and sign it and, you know, make it look official. But it's, yeah, we did our cals. That's all it was. And so, of course, I wrote a report and I made a page layout and I've got this thing. And what I'm finding more and more, like if you give someone a thing that was clearly machine generated, their confidence level in it, you know, like you could do a Word document that's beautiful and has pictures and stuff, but is obviously something that someone did in Word. It could just as easily be fake. But if you just like print a Salesforce record, well, that's the robots talking and people trust the robots, you know? So it actually is way better. So they love it, you know? So this is off the homepage. Here's the upcoming PMs. So this is what Don and Joyce's thing. And so what's next? So, oh yeah, this is one of our big testers. It's actually overdue. They were supposed to do it on, what have I got? June the 13th. I bet you they're doing it right now. And that if I did a snapshot of it, it would be done. So there you go. I'm done. You go. Tool independent picture of the system. Make the sub projects. Make a really lean proto version. Hit the point where the people who are going to use it actually can use it. So you're not just pushing it at them. And then let them design the rest of it. And away you go. Yeah. And that's me. And thanks again for coming. Yeah.
How many objects did you use in this build out? Is it just the PM objects or are there like related objects?
For this particular piece, I have like one custom object called equipment. And I've got one record for every piece of equipment there is. And we literally started like, I think maybe even like the fire extinguishers were like, yeah, let's put stickers on the fire extinguishers. So it just got so easy to use. Yeah. So I don't know. There's probably a couple of hundred.
Oh yeah, that's the number of records.
Yeah, but only one object.
One object in the equipment and then it's PM record.
No, it's just fields inside the record. Yeah. Yeah. And so you just do a list view and order it by next PM date. And
then this is,
it's really skinny.
I don't know if you use dynamic layouts at all, where you're surfacing particular fields based on the record values in the record. For example, if something's overdue, then when they look at the records. Okay.
I don't know what that is, but I think I need to know what that is. Dynamic record. Because I have been using record types to enact layouts. And that's starting to be comfortable around here, but there's an even better way to do it.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is
Awesome.
It
Awesome.
is next level of layout and record type versions. Give you better UI.
Better UI, yeah. Surfaces is what people need.
Nice.
But if you have like a light record, you face that it's not too big anyway. So
Right. You know what? Just this morning, someone was whining that they had to scroll. And I said, well, change the record type. You whiner. No, you gotta, when the users complain, it means they love your system and you take it as input and you thank them and you improve it, right?
Scott, if you were more often coming to user group,
Yes.
you will know already.
Dude, like this is the first time I've been out of the house since the pandemic. If it weren't for hockey. I have it like, so there's another thing we're doing that for sure someone in this room, we have some external systems where we export data from Salesforce into a spreadsheet, and then we have a Python script that goes and reads it. And right now what we do is we run the report, click export. Now it's a spreadsheet, except the tab name is like a weird thing. And some of the headings aren't exactly what we wish they were. So like there's 2 manual steps. So if we thought there was a way to, I know you can auto run reports, but we want to auto export and have it on its own, dump a spreadsheet into a folder somewhere. And have them do it.
Do you use Microsoft?
Microsoft, yeah.
There may be options to, if you have access to Power Automate, then you can read Salesforce. It has connector. Microsoft has connector.
So
to Salesforce.
okay, so you can write a tool that will log into Salesforce and do these things.
Salesforce, you read whatever you want to read, and then it can create spreadsheet for you because Excel features in this too.
Okay.
There is one of option that you can use to bridge automation between.
Yeah. So that's one little kind of niggly fly in our ointment, right? But dynamic layouts. I like it. Thank you.
Any more questions? You can stop recording.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, real quick, to hear more. You touched on it earlier about like your sales process.
Yeah.
How it's unique. This org they got going on here. Are you keeping track of the opportunities within there?
Oh yeah.
Is it just you, or you guys?
Oh no, the sales team and there's like our sales team is fairly small. There's really only 3 active people in it. So like we have an administrative sort of marketing aspect where we kind of fill the top of the funnel and do the early filtering. I've got what you'd think of as a traditional sales guy. And so he kind of manages me. And then, and so he uses tasks a lot. So every Monday I look at my task list and what does Rich have? And sort of the internal jargon we have is get me in a room with a guy doing a chip. And so Rich is his name. He'll arrange for meetings and figure out whether or not they're really doing a chip. And I'll ask him questions like, well, what's the name of the chip? What do they call it? It's like, oh, I don't know. Then you don't know enough. I'm not going. It's like, and they like to name their chips after cars or, snakes or cactuses or weird things. And they're all super proud of how clever it is. So that's one little filter test, it's the Alfonso chip. Okay. Check, what else? And then kind of it's almost like a show. And it's very much a manifestation of kind of my personality and just how we work meshed with how the industry works. So, I'll be in a room with a bunch of designers who have this notion that there's a chip that the world wants or they think the world wants. And they're all very infatuated with why their chip is different. But on a certain layer of abstraction, they're all the same. There's a clock, there's a reset pin, there's some inputs, there's some outputs, and they're going to have some really common problems. And so they think it's magic, but it's just me doing what I do. I'll get on the whiteboard and actually write a test spec and suggest some changes to their design. And then my sales guy, he watches this happen. And as soon as they've drunk the Kool-Aid, he goes, stop. that's enough, Scott, sit down. And then he turns and goes, all right, yeah, we're going to have to talk commercial terms here if you want more of that love. And so he gets me in a room, and then he's in charge of doing the quote and closing. And I've got this one little story. And so, you know, that's why it's so important. And I've got some other engineers who will do that as well from time to time. But, you know, you imagine if I was doing that for 50 people for 4 years, like I'd be nothing but weekly meetings, you know.
And meeting, qualifying, eventually.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's pretty sophisticated, right? And over the years, we've learned a bunch of tricks. And, you know, like there was some old dude that Sam set me up with back in 2002. I still remember it. Bill McQueenie was his name. And he said, Scott, always send a PDF of your quote, because if you send a Word version, it's inviting them to edit it. And no, you're done dickering. Send them the quote. That the appropriate response is a PO. And I'm like, oh, thanks, old man. Like, that was worth 20 minutes of my time. And I've lived by that. I've been doing PDFs, and it worked out, you know. And so that's got nothing to do with Salesforce, right? These are just techniques, right? Yeah. And then every once in a while, there's people in this world who hate me, and guys like me. And we roll out that show, and they're like, get this asshole out of here. And we've learned to like identify them. And Rich he'll say, like, we'll be on our way to then he's going, Scott, this is one of these kind of guys. So just shut up. And I was like, it wasn't easy at first, but I can do it. Like, I can just sit there quietly while some person of this personality type who doesn't want to hear this asshole, you know. So that's, to me, that's sales, right? That's the fun part. And you know, so yeah, you can.
They sometimes become the best customers, though, right?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. 100%, for sure. Yeah. And you're never like really sure how things are gonna go. Yeah. You bet. I could talk about that for hours, right? And it's like, I don't know, it's this sort of 20-year collection of anecdotes that you somehow manifest into a process, right? But then when you map it over to Salesforce, that's 3 or 4 boxes. Right. You know. Yeah.
I hate myself, but I need to stop Scott.
Yes.
Doing a great job.
Oh, that's how it works, right?